to them, of course. Live now, though, to Andreas Krieg, Associate Professor in War Studies at King's College London. Thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Okay.
Apologies in advance if we have to break away to either of those press conferences. And I want to underline right from the beginning, the BBC has not independently verified the release of these two hostages by Hamas. But if we take it that CBS News' confirmation does end up being officially confirmed by either of these press conferences, what do you make of it, the significance of it?
It is very significant because I think where there is a glimmer of hope after a couple of days of, or we should say 10 days of absolutely no hope and fear of escalation and further escalation and a ground invasion, it shows that mediation still has a chance, and diplomacy still stands a chance. It's quite clear that the countries have brokered this deal so far as they're kind of pressing on Hamas to make a sign of goodwill and saying that Hamas is willing to talk and negotiate. And it seems to be a unilateral release of these two hostages. We'll see what the Israelis will make out of it. But there seems to be a chance to get more of these hostages released if the IDF operation on the ground is actually delayed indefinitely, which is exactly what pretty much everyone really would like to see in order to create a humanitarian corridor and kind of get a break in that level of violence that we've seen over the last couple of days. But we'll have to see to what extent Israel is willing to enter into any negotiation with Hamas at this point.
So give us an idea of how this diplomacy works behind the scene when it comes to hostages.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, we have to understand that Hamas is a networked actor and consists of a lot of different parties and entities. It's not a unitary actor. Part of the political leadership of Hamas is one part is based in Doha and the other one is based in Turkey. And they are not necessarily always in touch with what is going on the ground in Gaza. But one great argument that Qatar has made over the last couple of weeks, but also over the last couple of years, of why it wants to retain the presence of that Hamas office in Qatar is that it can play that mediation role. And it turns out it's significantly very, very important. It's something that can actually shift the course of that conflict now, is that the countries are able to speak to Haniyeh, who is based in Qatar, and he can then speak to some of the brigades and actually press something happening on the ground, actually pressing them to change their course and their actions. The countries are in direct contact, obviously, contact with the Americans. They're in direct contact with the Israelis as well, and they have been. This Hamas office was created by the Obama administration in Qatar. It's not only consented by the Americans, but has always played a very important role as well for the Israelis, because the countries have a direct contact with the Israelis as well, despite the fact that neither side would actually publicly admit to that. But so the countries are able to speak to the US, they're able to speak to Iran, they're able to speak to Hamas directly, and they're able to speak to Israel, which makes them kind of the predestined actor there to kind of connect the different dots and hopefully avert a greater, larger escalation and a regional conflict that we're all trying to avoid.
Interesting. We shall see. Andreas Krieg, thank you very much for coming on the programme.